Moana Pasifika. Like I heard you guys on the Counter Ruck last night. You guys were putting your 5 cents in, which is for me being a supporter of Manu Samoa. That's my first team. I shared my allegiance to All Blacks a long time ago,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, I did. My first team is Manu Samoa. Second team is the Blues. So nowhere in my hierarchy of teams I support is All Blacks anywhere.
Oh,
They're nowhere, nowhere. It goes Manu Samoa, then Blues. Auckland Rugby third.
oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I've got too many Gaia teams. I need one to be good. So yeah, I've got still got the All Blacks up high, just so that one of my teams I can guarantee will win a lot of things. So no, but that's good. Yeah, I've got a soft spot for the Manu, obviously being of Samoan descent, but you just also like cheering for the underdog. But yeah, it's been a long, arduous road to get them somewhere. So hopefully we're going to touch on the Moana Pasifika and hopefully they can help out.
And that's where I'm going to come from. My angle of coming from the angle of me being a Manu Samoa fan, I would want anything that will bring us up. Anything that will help Manu Samoa be competitive again in the World Cup. Because it's something that we're missing from the 90s. It's been hard lately in the World Cup to see us just struggle to even qualify. Because I think we had to qualify the last World Cup. You
And
know?
again, we're going to have to requalify again.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
sure how that's going, but yeah, you're right. From the triumphant days of what was it, '91, where they got Wales and they got to the quarterfinals, and yeah, it's been pretty long road after that. But it's weird because '91 was this, I guess, in a way, the last amateur World Cup. '95 was when the game changed to professional, and it's hard for teams like the Manu because they haven't had a professional team. So they've sort of been stuck in the amateur era while everyone else has gone professional and have been left behind as a result. So Moana Pasifika, in some ways, is that the professional sort of team we need to help to fill that void? I mean, I suppose that's what we're here to discuss, and that's what we'll see in the future. Anyway.
I would want the Moana Pacifica team to succeed if it helps Manu Samoa or Tonga, because that's who they represent. But listening to what's been happening in the media, what also Kevin came on TV and talked about the 80%, 20%, I feel for them because I know that it's probably not what they really wanted from the start. They wanted total control, but for some reasons, maybe it'd be financial or whatever's, they had to go forward with this deal, which is letting New Zealand have a 20% piece of the team in terms of putting their own players in as like a vessel for them to choose players to come in the All Blacks, which to me is like shucks, really. I mean, okay, I understand to get our team, a Pacifica team, into a competition like as quality as the Super Rugby is, to get our team in there. Yeah, that's cool, but to extreme sign a deal with the devil to get there.
Yeah, I was on the same boat as you, but I mean, I suppose, man, I love listening to the ESPN guys, Max Kellerman and that, and he has that famous saying he always says, where he says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and that's sort of where my take on it. So, in the perfect scenario and the perfect answer we could have got would have been 100% full Polynesian players only, but I think 80-20. That's a good solution, and it's better than what we've had for the last 25 years, which is nothing. So I mean, yeah, if we can't get the perfect solution, we should stick with the good solution, and this is, in my opinion, a good solution. 80% is better than nothing, and I think you're right. That 20% was sort of one of the things we had to give up to get it across the line, and in that ways, I think you just have to make those deals with the devil, as you said, and go with it. So I think I will see how it goes, but I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of it if they do it properly, for sure.
I feel like if they did it properly, it would have been a situation like the Fiji Jura team. Because it looks like they don't have any deals with the New Zealand Rugby having 20%, 30%, or whatever. It feels like they're fully 100% backed, financially backed by someone, and aligned to their country, to Fiji, 100%. So if the Fiji Jura team is coming into Super Rugby as a independent of anyone other than Fiji, which I think that Moana Pacifica fell short of, and same as Kanaloa. If Kanaloa had 100% backing, they would have probably made the MLR. There was a reason why they failed to make the MLR when they applied for it.
Yeah,
So,
I think Fiji draw was if you look at the Polynesian national teams, like the Fijian team for quite a while actually has been the strongest, so they can bring the most in terms of player pool and player excellence. They can bring more top quality players just because Fiji are better than Samoa and Tonga, and also the Fijian draw team is an established team, so they've been playing in the Shoot Shield. You mentioned that on the Counter Ruck previous, so when we were discussing it. So that's basically a pre-established team which is already coming in. Whereas I think because Moana Pasifika was a startup, that's where the New Zealand Rugby Union could sort of put these caveats in place and say, hey, you can come in, but you have to do this, this, and this. Whereas Fiji Draw was already established, so they're like, we're just going to come in as we are. And so, yeah, I think that was a primary difference and a critical difference as to how New Zealand Rugby Union was able to get sort of their hooks in, if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, I still think like if they do it properly, there's a lot of benefits to both Samoa and Tonga if they do it right. So yeah, just for our listeners, so the 80-20 rule, 80% of the squad has to be aligned to a Pacific nation, and then 20% can be sort of non-Pacific players, so New Zealanders and stuff. People are already aligned with that. And I think they're having 38-man squad, so that's 80%. That's 30 guys of sort of Samoan and Tongan eligible players or neutral players. So that's still quite a lot, when you think of it like that. So I think it's going to be good. My big question is, where are they going to get 30 Samoan and Tongan players from? Because it's basically going to be, that's two starting 15s worth of players. A lot of the players will be contracted to other clubs and stuff already. So to come up with that many guys, and that's sort of one of my concerns, is they've backed themselves, well, not backed themselves, but they've got this hard and fast rule already, which means they have to fill it up with 80% of these sort of Pacific players, and a lot of those players will already be on contracts, and that means that they'll probably end up with a lot of sort of developmental players, and that makes me worry a bit, because if you're getting sort of just to meet the quota, you're filling it up with under 20s guys or whoever just to get to the 80%. That team with development guys won't be that competitive early on. They could be in for a few hidings if that's what ends up happening.
yeah, because I don't think they could get players for the likes of Charles Pieta or Stephen Luatua back when they're earning much more money up north. Why would you come back to earn like half your pay or something, playing Super Rugby? I think they will struggle to get those kind of players who are up north already. But and that was the other question I had too. Like this 20%, is the Charles Pietals and Stephen Luatuas, are they going to fit? Are they going to come back into the 20%, or are they going to be amongst the 80%?
Now they're going to be the 20%. They have to be, because the 80% is Pacific Island aligned or neutral, and they're neither of those. They're not neutral. They're New Zealand eligible players. So if they come in and they carved up, then the All Blacks could pick them because they've already played for the All Blacks, which means they'd have to be in that 20%. That's my understanding anyway.
Because I think that doesn't suit New Zealand rugby, because they will want the fringe players, like for instance Nico Jones.
Or if Charles Pietell, if they could get Charles Pietell, yeah, if they could get someone like Charles Pietell and he carved up for Moana Pasifika, I reckon the All Blacks would pick him straight away, because we know how good he is, and he's been killing it over in Europe. I don't watch a lot of the European games, but I think that they would be happy with Luatua and Pietell coming back and playing for them, because then they already played for the All Blacks. They're aligned to the All Blacks already. It's just a matter of if their form is up to it, and they don't have to risk, I suppose, any of their 5 home franchises sort of sucking the bill, and the New Zealand Rugby Union paying the bill. So that's another point, whereas Moana Pasifika will pay the wages, and then if they get picked up for the All Blacks, if they're good enough, then that's when the New Zealand Rugby Union can top them up. So I think they'll be really happy with that scenario, to be fair.
So my question to you before we came on the pod was, how would Tonga and Samoa benefit from this Moana Pasifika team? How would they benefit?
Yeah, I heard Kevin Sinio, so he's the new general manager of Moana Pasifika, and he said that he was going to try to do a lot of work with the Samoan under-20s and the Tongan under-20s. And I think that might be sort of where the benefit comes. They can provide sort of elite pathways, and Moana Pasifika can get those under-20s guys and develop them and provide sort of those professional opportunities to a lot of these young players. Because, a lot of players who come from those under-20s programs, they'll leave Tonga or Samoa and they'll go to develop in a tier 1 nation, and they'll be lost. They won't ever play for them again. So Malakai Fikitoa, he was a Tongan under-20s guy, I believe. I think Fakatava was another guy who was a Tongan under sort of superstar over there. Vaya Fifita's another guy. There's been a couple of Samoan guys who've come over from Samoa as well. And then if they're good enough, they basically align to the All Blacks. Or sometimes they go over to Japan or wherever, and then that's it. They don't get picked from the Manu Samoa. They just go and take the money for these tier 1 nations or the richer nations, which you can't knock them because that's sort of, they're providing for their family and they're taking those opportunities. But I think if Moana Pasifika was to get them and they're developing them and using that 80% rule to develop them and then pushing them towards playing for Tonga and Samoa, then that's got to be beneficial. But I know Joey was a bit sort of skeptical about that scenario unfolding, but that's sort of how they're painting the picture of how it could theoretically work. But one thing I wanted to see is I wanted to know, which we don't know, sort of what the Manu Samoa and what Tongan rugby are going to do to help Moana Pasifika, because it sort of seems like it's one way. What's Moana Pasifika going to do to help the islands? But if you look at New Zealand rugby, they help out their 5 franchises, the Blues and the Crusaders, and that, because they understand that if the Blues and the Crusaders do well and their teams do well, the players do well, that they'll filter into the All Blacks. So the Manu Samoa and Tongan Rugby Union have to also understand that if the players do well in Moana Pasifika and it goes how they plan it to go, those players will filter towards their international teams. So the two can have to help each other out, and the two have to work together. So, there's a lot of people who say, what's Moana Pasifika going to do to help the other island nations? But it has to be a joint venture. They have to work together. So I'm curious what the Manu Samoan are going to do to help help Moana Pasifika, because if they can help provide sponsorship or tell some of their players who are already part of it, go back and play for this team. I think if and it works out properly, if Moana Pasifika is successful and they funnel players towards the national teams, then the two can be successful together, or the two could potentially fail together. But they've got to find that common ground. Is what I think. Yeah.
There's also there's another layer in there too, and that's the Northern Hemisphere club teams. They recruit from international, and then the second tier down, they recruit from Super Rugby sort of level. So if you get more players playing in Super Rugby, that's another team for those guys to recruit as well. So you're always going to be drawn away from the bigger money contracts, whether it be Japan or Europe as well. So my concern is when you have all these factors in place, picking all these players, what's left for Moana Pasifika and what's left for Tonga and Samoa in the end, after everyone's taken their piece of the pie?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But one thing I do say is because Moana Pasifika is theoretically aligned to helping out the Pacific nations, rugby is ruled by so much self-interest. So the clubs, they'll take a lot of the island players before they've declared their allegiance, and the countries of those clubs are happy for that to happen, because in theory they will turn out for those countries as well once they've passed their residency. But because Moana Pasifika are built to help the Polynesian teams, they'll be bringing these guys in and recruiting them and developing them in the hopes of them eventually representing those PI nations. So I think that critical point of difference, if it's done properly, that could be one thing, because like I mentioned before, heaps of players have come through the Tongan and Samoan development systems, been snapped up by clubs and tier 1 nations, and that's it. They're gone forever. They turn out for other countries and play for other clubs overseas, and they almost never end up playing for their home nations. So I think that this Moana Pasifika, who are aligned to those home nations, could definitely help to stem that flow of players away from the islands. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, because we talked about this, we drunken talked about this on when we did our very early episodes of the 135 when it was just a lot of shouting and drinking and stuff. But we talked about the loophole of the Olympics. So I would love, this might be a bit dodgy, but I wonder if Moana Pasifika would be open to picking players and then using the loophole. So if they said, "Oh, we'll sign Charles Piutau and we'll release him for 3 or 4 weeks for the Olympic qualifiers to play for Tonga," then he can come back and sign for us for 3 years and be a Tongan national and fall in at 80%. Or like with Steve Lautua, it's sort of thinking a bit outside the box, and it might be a bit dodgy, but I reckon they should do it. I think they should sign Piutau, give him 3 weeks off to play in the Olympic qualifiers. He can change to Tonga, and then they can have him for three years playing for Moana Pasifika and him playing for Tonga, and do the same with Luatua and whoever else they want to loophole in. I just think that's a cheeky way of filling the 80% quota and changing people's allegiance back to Samoa and Tonga.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant loophole for these players to take advantage of, you know?
Yeah,
And
and if Moana Pasifika are doing their job, because clubs don't want to release the players to play in these Olympics qualifiers, you know, they think it's a waste of time. Well, it doesn't help their club. But if Moana Pasifika are set up to improving the island teams, then they should be open to letting players loophole, take a couple of weeks off to play in that loophole.
nice. Nice. You hit it here, guys. Empty out the clip.
Yep. Kim, if you're listening, mate, use that loophole and get Charles Piutau and all the rest of it back. So just for our listeners, I think you've got to play 2 or 3 Olympic qualifiers in the sevens, and then you can change your national allegiance. So do it.
I'll see you, man. Before